Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Meet America. I want to thank all of you out there who watch this program to get updates on what's going on with our environment and what our Congress members are doing or not doing. And of course, we always want to keep you updated on what's happening to our wild horses, because our wild horses are being stolen from us by the ranchers, by the beef industry, and so is all of our wildlife. And so if you can buy from ranches that graze their cattle on private lands, that's where you need to go if you can't give up meat. And the wild horses are at stake as usual. Since the Republicans have taken over the House, the Appropriations Committee members have all voted in this little small committee to use your tax dollars to reinstate horse slaughter. And now I want to talk to you about how hypocritical some of these Congress members are. Congressman Ken Calvert, he voted for horse slaughter, yet he's also on the Safeguard America's Food Export Act, which is to prevent horse slaughter. So he wanted to look good for his constituents during this last voting mecca we had just a while back, and he wanted to look good, like he cares about animals. So he joined on the SAFE Act to prevent horse slaughter and to make sure that horse meat doesn't enter our food chain, because it's not only is it inhumane and cruel to slaughter horses, and I've showed you much footage on that, and you can go to YouTube and see all the footage for yourself. But then what does he do? He votes in this committee to reinstate horse slaughter with your tax dollars. Now, horse slaughter, to reinstate horse slaughter in the United States, is going to cost a minimum of $5 million plus. And their reasoning is that, well, these horses are going to Mexico and Canada, and we can greatly reduce their suffering if we just slaughter them here. Well, the whole reason the horse slaughter industry ended here was because of the inherent cruelties. It was just beyond the pale. And not only that, blood was coming out of people's faucets in the town where they were slaughtering these horses. So it's unspeakable, the cruelty, and we have to speak up. So I would like to show you the names of these people. Ken Calvert, who's on that Appropriations Committee, he voted with your tax dollars. I contacted them, and these are the members that voted to reinstate horse slaughter this last, in the 2018 omnibus budget. And luckily the Senate members in the Appropriations Committee, they voted against it. And because the Senate has a more powerful vote, now's the time when everyone's meeting, between the senators and the Congress members, they're meeting to decide whether or not to reinstate budget money for horse slaughter in the 2018 omnibus budget. And that's being decided right now. So I'm hoping all of you will call your Congress members and your senators and say, don't you dare take my tax dollars to reinstate horse slaughter. And they're also considering dogs and cats. There's certain states where it's not illegal to slaughter dogs and cats for food. So you see, they're just this sort of cannibalism of eating our animals, our companion animals, is getting us used to the idea, yeah, we can eat anything and anybody. And what's next on the menu, folks? I guarantee you it's going to be us. I guarantee you, because it already is. We're already cannibalizing ourselves in the sense that we prey on each other, and this administration is just interested in feeding its own rich people. They're not interested in health care for the poor. They're not interested in health care for the middle class. They're interested in just feeding their own riches, because that's what happens to these people. They become obsessed with making more money, and that's all they can see. So we have to stop this kind of avarice, and it starts with our wild horses. So please, now I'm going to name these people who voted for this. Congressman Fortenberry from Nevada, all Republicans. Congressman Rodney Frelinghuysen, I think he's also a Republican from New Jersey, and I think he was caught up in this sex scandal, so I think he's the one who's retiring. You see the horse karma there? I'm glad there's some horse karma, because these poor horses sure could use some. Congressman Kay Granger. Imagine a woman, how ruthless and cruel these people are. They're so cruel. They shouldn't even be members of Congress. They shouldn't be representing people at all because they have no heart, no soul. We have Congressman Tom Graves from Georgia. He's a Republican from Georgia. Congressman Andy Harris, Republican from Maryland. We have Dan Newhouse, Washington. Steve Palazzo, Republican from Mississippi, and I think Dan Newhouse is a Democrat. Shame on him. Martha Roby, a Republican from Alaska. Harold Rogers, a Republican from Kentucky. Michael Simpson, a Republican from Idaho, and Chris Stewart, a Republican from Iowa, and David Young, a Republican from Iowa. And all these Congress members in these appropriation committees used your tax dollars to reinstate horse slaughter in the 2018 omnibus budget. I have contacted our Congressman Panetta, Joe Panetta, and I'm waiting for him to reply to me. What is he going to do? Is he going to initiate an investigation into the illegal mismanagement and criminal taking of our wild horses and burros? Is he going to do that? And I'm hoping he will. Luckily, he has joined on the SAFE Act to safeguard America's wild horses and domestic horses from this terrible, heinous slaughter that's going on. And I have sent all of them the footage of a horse being shot 11 times in a slaughter plant before it actually went down. And so that's what happens to these horses. They get shot once or twice, then they go into their panic, frenzy, pain mode, and guess what happens? They just hoist them up by a chain and they skin them alive. You know, it's hideous what they're doing, and we must not allow it. As Americans, we must not allow this to continue. So now we're going to interview on the phone Craig Downer. He's a real advocate for our wild horses and returning them to the lands that were taken from them and letting them do their ecological wonder that they do. And you know, he's a wildlife ecologist, a wonderful spokesman for the horses. So let's listen to him, and hopefully you will do something, folks, because that's the only voice these horses have, and the time is now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being with us on the phone. We have Craig Downer, and Craig, I've introduced you as a wildlife ecologist, and you have studied these wild horses all your life. Can you tell us briefly your experience with what BLM has done to these herds compared to when you were a little boy, and what you saw then as opposed to now?
Well, since then, there was, of course, I was born before the Wild Free-Roaming Horses and Burros Act, and there were some terrible exploitations occurring at that time by which they were rounded up, including using light-wing aircraft. That was very gory. But there, you know, thanks to Wild Horse Annie and several others like Hope Ryden, dear Hope Ryden, who passed away this past year, and several others, there were laws passed. At first, the so-called Wild Horse Annie Act to prevent the use of motorized vehicles, including airplanes.
But we don't have much time to explain to the public. I mean, compared to then, were there more horses then, or are there more horses now on the wild? Well, maybe BLM's doing a good job. I don't know. Are they doing a good job?
They're not obeying the law. There was a law passed. The main law was passed in 1971, the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burros Act. And actually, although they say there were only 17,000 wild horses and burros then, there were actually a lot more. There were probably more like 60,000, which still isn't very much when you compare all the vast West and all the different areas where they occurred. It was just a small remnant. But since then, due to political interference, the wild horses have been zeroed out, or they've been disavowed or ignored in the legal herd areas on many millions of acres of Bureau of Land Management and United States Forest Service land. And these are still legal acres where they were supposed to have be the principal presences and receive the principal share of the resources.
Well, what I'd like to talk about now a little bit, because we don't have much time, is the fact that you personally have worked with Nick Ilya, and he bought 600 acres in Nevada to allow some wild horses some water rights, because the horses were removed. Can you explain what attempts you've tried to get the BLM to reinstate some of these horses there, and are you being ignored, or is
they're being ignored, callously ignored by this Carson City, Nevada BLM district? Now, I went through all the steps, and Nick came in too, and we had meetings, and so we're doing everything correctly. And they have set up these cooperative agreements under Sections 4 and 6 of the Act, which allows people who like the wild horses to allow their land to be used and complement them for their water or forage requirements or shelter or whatever. And that's exactly what we're doing in good faith. And the fact is that this Horse Mountain area they had decided that it would be an area where the wild horses would continue. In other words, they wouldn't zero it out. So this makes it all the more outrageous. And just about a year ago, I had a few words with this John Axtell, the wild horse and burro specialist in Carson City, and he acted like he didn't know hardly anything about it. And he just told me in a rather rude manner, he said, well, it's not going to happen, Craig. And he didn't even realize that it was on what side of the highway that goes south from Fallon it was located. So obviously he hadn't even bothered to familiarize himself. And I think this is just outrageous. And we were told by another more courteous employee of BLM that has jurisdiction over the field, that part of the district, that there are such cooperative agreements that they have arranged with ranchers and others whereby they provide them with sufficient water. You see, the excuse they're using for not continuing to manage for wild horses there in Horse Mountain, which has tens of thousands of legal herd area acres, herd management area, is that once the farmer stopped farming there, and therefore he stopped pumping these wells where they were getting water, and so that was their excuse. But now, with the Ilya land, he has two permanent sources of water, great water that comes up untainted, and he has forage, and all we're asking is that they allow the wild horses. It's right adjacent to Horse Mountain on the east side, and the highway is fenced there further to the east, so that'll prevent them from going on the highway. So it's a perfect setup, but we've got to be the squeaky wheel here. We can't. The wild horses should be set back there. and should be allowed to occupy their rightful home. This is the core intent of the law.
Well, you know, this to me is the corruption of America. The horses are the messengers of that, indeed, and just one messenger. But the corruption and the taking of our wildlife and our horses has got to be stopped. And so, you know, I just wanted people to witness. I wanted people to witness the corruption, and I will continue to report it. And I want an update. I've just contacted my Congressman, Joe Panetta, and asked him to investigate BLM, and I'm waiting for an answer. I don't expect anything to happen, but I just want people to know that on every level, as long as you vote for these individuals that could care less about us, care less about the environment, care less about our wildlife and our wild horses, it's going to get worse. And so thank you so much, Craig, for updating us. And can you please contact this person, or should I contact him and say I'd like an answer why they're not responding to your...
Well, I have repeatedly contacted, and the thing is that I wrote it up according to their requirements. It's part of the proposed public input into the resource management plan, which they're in the process of revising, and now it's way overdue. Mm-hmm. So they should be coming out with this. I've done my requirements, so it's in their ballpark, but I do keep pestering them.
Well, why don't I pester them? I mean, I'm doing a story on this, so why don't I pester them?
I think you should. Why don't you call John Axel there at the Carson City BLM and ask him what's happening with Horse Mountain?
Okay.
You don't have to say that I put you up to it, but just say, hey, I'm aware of Horse Mountain, and I have a TV show, and I want to see the horses treated fairly out there in the legal herd management area.
Okay.
That I'm planning to visit there, so when you come up, we can go out there, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Craig, so much. I really appreciate your, efforts. And Nick, this wonderful man who bought this land so these horses could have their water rights back. And, still the BLM is saying they've got to slaughter all these horses, the 49,000 in holding, because they're too expensive to keep. But yet, when people actually go and buy land so that they can be returned, it's ignored. And this is what I want the public to know. I want the public to know what kind of a government this is, that it doesn't care at all.
I wanted to say, Annie, that the wild horses and the wild burros are very important today because of the dry vegetation, which is on account of global warming. It's causing catastrophic wildfires all over the West and other areas. Now, they're the perfect reducers of this dry, flammable vegetation, and they also, in the process, create moisture-retaining soils, much more so than the ruminants because of the difference of their digestive system. So we need these. We need them to preserve the ecosystem, keep it from burning up, bottom line. They can save forests, rangelands, and it's to everyone's interest, and they're beautiful to boot. So what more can you ask for?
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much. And folks, those are the people in Congress that voted to reinstate horse slaughter. That $5 million plus that should be going towards our own conventional meat supply, which is in dire straits. These cruel members of Congress, I want you to see their names up on the screen, to know these members that are using your tax dollars, your hard-earned tax dollars, to want to slaughter these horses. That's what it is. They want to fund this foreign industry, horse meat industry, and they're targeting the wild ones. So please call your Congress members. Please spread the word. And thank you so much, Craig. Really appreciate your input here.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
And what is, do you have the number of this man who's in charge of Horse Mountain?
Let's
You
see.
said the BLM.
Yes, I believe I have it here. Just a second.
Okay.
Let me look.
You're looking on the screen there, folks. You're looking at all the members of Congress. Yeah?
775
775
885
885.
6000.
Okay, can you repeat that, please?
775 885 6000.
Okay, 6000. Okay, and his name?
John Axtell, and or if you want to speak to the manager of the office, his name is Ralph Thomas. That might be better to try him first.
Okay.
To him.
All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye. So, folks, if you can do your part, call your Congressmember Panetta, Joe Panetta here in Monterey, and ask him to please investigate BLM, return the horses to their herd areas, especially the ones that were taken away from them. The 52 million acres that was originally allocated to wild horses in the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act, it has been taken away. 22 million acres have been taken away from them, and it just needs to stop. So I think by showing, well, let's read this. This is, we weren't able to hear the song, so we're going to hear the song now that this woman put to the footage.
I want to spin across a wide open dance floor. I want to run down a long winding road. I want to drive on a straight empty highway and feel the wind as she blows. I want to float on the waves of the ocean. I want to stroll down a long sandy shore. I want to gaze in the eyes of a wild horse and know my own Mustang soul. I'll run through the wind, chasing blue skies. I'll run through the wind. I'll run for my life. I want to stand on the open plains at sunset. I want to run toward the far horizon's glow. I want to lay beneath the vast starry moonlight and dream of places to go. I want to follow
Folks, this is our America. This is our country. It's not to be just taken away from us like Hitler took away the Jews. It's not to be taken away from us and all the wildlife and everything else. And that's what's happening. Our air, our water, everything is being taken away from us. Our wildlife, I mean, it's all happening, and we cannot just sit back and let them do it. And when we vote for people that care, when we vote for people that have the guts to even want to go to Congress to do a better job, we have better stand up and make those thousands of calls and write those thousands of letters and boycott beef so the beef industry goes, whoa, hey, wait a minute, how come our beef industry's going down? What are we doing to make these people mad? And all of a sudden they see that the beef industry, where the people that are, the ranchers that are growing beef on private land, they're becoming rich, maybe they'll start paying attention. And maybe we can save a few of our wild horses. But it's going to take you. You can't just guzzle down hamburgers not knowing where they come from and not caring. You have got to have You've got to have the spirit in you, the greatness. You can't be beaten down and just go, what's the use? I'm just one person. It's not going to make any difference. Because you are the difference. That's why America is what it is today, because too many people are guzzling down too many hamburgers and too many animals, you know, and driving needlessly here and there and everywhere without even thinking, and having so many children without even teaching them. And the children look at you and they go, wait a minute, why aren't you doing more for my future? Why don't you care? You know? So pick up that phone and call that Ralph Thomas at 775-885-6000 and say, yeah, I just saw a program on wild horses, and a perfect opportunity where some of them could be returned because a nice man bought some water rights for them. Why aren't you taking those horses and letting them be there? And I'm going to do that in my next segment. And you can hear all the excuses that they'll have, all the excuses. So thanks for watching.
DLM, this is Lena.
Yes, Lena, I'd like to talk to Ralph Thomas, please.
Okay, just one moment. Let me transfer the call.
Thank you. All right, so unfortunately, although I recorded that conversation, I cannot air it until I get permission from the BLM to air it. So what I've done is I'm going to tell you, basically, to the best of my ability, what that conversation entailed. I talked to Ralph Thomas, who is the manager of the BLM there in Carson City, and I explained that we've been waiting for this proposal that Craig Downer had submitted to them in the past 2 years, and he claimed that he had never seen it or heard of it, and that he hadn't heard from Craig Downer for over 2 years. So I explained the proposal to him, and he said he would like to see this proposal. And I have since then, I'm supposed to call Craig Downer and have him get in contact with Ralph, and we're going to go from there. And so that's basically what happened. And it's promising. In other words, well, I don't like to even say it's promising, because I really don't believe, I believe that the BLM is going to make every excuse not to do this proposal. And so already, apparently, the water authorities there in Fallon, Nevada, they're saying that it has to be for a good use. The water can only be used for good uses. So they can say, well, wild horses are not good uses, even though they are. Wild horses disseminate dry brush, they eat dry brush, and therefore they eliminate fire hazards. And in the areas where they have been removed, fires have broken out that weren't there before. So that's just one of the reasons. The other is they reseed with their manure, and I have taken photographs of grasses growing out of their manure. So that's another thing that's very, very important. And they also stopped erosion because their hoof prints indent in the soil next to plants and cause kind of a cup. So rainfall comes and fills those cups and doesn't run over the land. These are all things that the BLM and the ranchers try to deny, but I have gone out personally and videotaped these footprints, which I have shown you on countless occasions. So having said that, we are now going to go back to me calling Craig Downer and telling him the news that Ralph is indeed interested in seeing this proposal. And thank you so much for watching, for caring, for wanting to do something for the wild horses. Boy, what a TV show can do, especially if you're out there watching. So I'll keep you updated, folks, on this issue, and I'm going to call Craig right now.
Hello?
Hi, Craig. It's me, Lauren Annie. And guess what? I just talked to Ralph Thomas, and he says he knows nothing about the proposal. You never did send a proposal, he said. And he also said that he hasn't heard from you in over 2 years. So I said, well, I just had Craig on my show, and Craig told me that he did have the proposal. He had sent the proposal.
I sent it to Terry Knutson. It's a part of their resource management plan.
Okay, so Ralph wants you to email him the proposal, and I said on the air, because I got it all on air, I said I would like to work with your agency to return these horses to this area. He doesn't even know anything about it.
Wow, they're keeping him in the dark.
Yeah. So anyway, he seemed open to it, and I said I'm keeping my listeners on this to just see.
Copy of my book because he said his wife is a wild horse advocate.
Well, Ralph Thomas would like you to give him a call right now, and he would like you to talk about that proposal, where it is. He'd like to see it. And he'd like to get the ball rolling. That's what he said.
Well, that's great.
Well, we'll see.
What's his number?
Well, it's the number you gave me, 775.
Oh, yeah, that one. Okay.
Yeah, so call him right now. He's there.
Okay, Ralph Thomas. And could you give me the number again here?
Oh, yeah, 775-885-6000.
Okay, great. I'll give him a call then.
All right. Okay, good work for all of us, maybe. We'll see. You know, I'm just doing this report to prove to people that BLM does not want the horses returned. So I don't expect anything to happen, but boy, I sure hope I'm wrong, folks. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, we just have to we got to stand up there depending on us, the horses.
Well, yeah, we sure do. All right, Greg, thank you. All right, call me as soon as you hear something, all right?
All right.
All right,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.
All right, so you see the workings of maybe something happening where this wonderful man bought 600 acres with water rights so that the horses that lived next door could finally have water rights and they could be returned. Now, just to explain to you briefly again, under the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act, it states, and anyone can look it up, in Section C, the first page, it states that horses will be given devoted principal presence on their land, on their rangeland. And so that means that they get first choice of food, first choice of water, and all multiple choices get second choice. But the BLM and the judges, they all are in cahoots together, and so the corruption goes on. And as long as there's corruption in our government, we're not going to ever have a great country. And we're always going to have really awful people that want horse slaughter and are cruel to animals and are cruel to people, like all these Republicans that I showed you. And I'm going to show you again their names. These Congress members that voted to reinstate horse slaughter under the Stewart Act, which allows them to apparently take our wild horses and send them to slaughter. And these are the names of them. Congressman Rodney, this man, he got thrown out. I think he resigned. Freehensign, I can't even pronounce it, but it's a name. I'm going to read them out to you. Okay. Robert Adderholt, okay, he's a huge in appropriations, very powerful Congress member from Alabama. He wants those horses slaughtered. Boy, he wants them gone. Big money for the foreign, horse meat industry, sending our wild horses to slaughter. This man wastes our tax dollars like you wouldn't believe, and he needs to be voted out. So if anyone's watching this from his district, I hope you'll spread the word. Mark Amoldi from Nevada, bad guy again, wants to slaughter our wild horses and our domestic horses, doesn't care how cruel, doesn't care that the meat's poisonous, doesn't care that it gives cancer to children. He doesn't care. None of these guys care. If they cared, they'd take that $5 million that they want to reinstate horse slaughter, and they'd say, wait a minute, we need to rethink what's happening to our conventional meat supply. I mean, that's in such bad state that 3,000 plus people die a year of E. coli and hamburger meat and just terrible pathogens in our meat. And now the meat inspectors have been laid off, and so guess who's inspecting the meat? The processors. And do you think the processors want to take out any cancerous meats when the weight is so important? I mean, it just goes on, the corruption, so it's up to us folks. Okay, Ken Calvert, bad guy again. He's on the SAFE Act, but at the same time, he's voting to reinstate horse slaughter. John Carter from Texas, Tom Cole from Oklahoma, Henry Cuellar from Texas, Democrat no less. Oh, shame on him. To me, the Democrats at least have more heart. At least they care a little bit about us, And sure, we need a third party, but good luck with that. In the meantime, we're going to have to go with the best of the worst. Jeff Fortenberry, Nevada, another Republican from voted. These are all people that voted for horse slaughter. You're seeing them on the screen, folks, and I want you to remember them. And if they happen to be your Congress members, please contact them and say, I'm not voting for you anymore. You're a cruel, horrible man that wants to reinstate horse slaughter in our country. It's never going to happen. America is too great. A woman told me that America is going to be the country that leads the rest of this world into a very wonderful, humane way of being. And I can only hope that that's true. So let's look at some more of these names here. Here's some more. Dan Newhouse from Washington, shame on you and you're a Democrat. You shouldn't. These are all people that voted to reinstate horse slaughter into the 2018 omnibus budget. Tom Graves, that's a very fitting name for him, isn't it? From Georgia. Andy Harris, Republican from Maryland. Dan Newhouse from Washington, Steve Palazzoa, Mississippi, Martha Roby, Republican from Alabama, Harold Rogers, oh, all these cruel people voting for horse slaughter. There they are. There's names up there. And when you say a name, you know, the universe hears. So I hope all those people that are voting for horse slaughter just get voted out of Congress, because they don't belong there. They don't belong, destroying our beautiful horses, the nation's beautiful horses, and totally eliminating their bloodlines and castrating them. They castrate all these wonderful stallions that have, for 200 years, they've been there, you know, in the wild, surviving, and it's so important we keep their bloodlines. So I've said enough, and I hope you'll do your part. So now we're going to move on to net neutrality. What is it? And apparently now the FCC, yeah, definitely we know who they are taking away our net neutrality. So let's find out what that means. And thanks for watching. Okay, folks, just in, this is Craig Downer on the phone. He just talked to Ralph. And what was the outcome of that, Craig?
Oh, yes, he was nice, and he said that it is a herd management area, so they had decided to manage for wild horses there rather than a zeroed-out herd area, and that he said that, you know, but he wasn't familiar, but he wants me to send the proposal, which has been in there a couple of years, you know, to them, and that he's going to pursue this. He says a lot of the thing... the decision to set up such a agreement where wild horses can use water on private land is that there has to be an agreement in perpetuity by the owners, and also that the local water masters have to sign off on it as a beneficial use. So that means that they have to regard the wild horses as beneficial and not...
Well, you know they don't. They would want cattle on there.
Yeah, too often that's the case, but we just have to stand up because this is a chance, you know.
Well, not only that, what's the ecological value of these horses, Craig?
They prevent catastrophic wildfires, and they build the soils, and they seed the plants, and they're beautiful presences. People love to go out and watch them and photograph them.
I hear
there are many beneficial uses. It's just we have to get the establishment to recognize this and pull in their horns. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing to happen now during the holidays, huh? During Christmas.
Well, don't hold your breath. Huh. But
well,
anyway.
I mean, believe in anything that's good's ever going to happen, and why do anything, you know?
Well, you know, that's the thing. I'm just so skeptical because so far in all the years we've worked, nothing's been good. But it doesn't mean that we don't stop working, and maybe things can change. So keep us posted, would you, Craig? And let's start talking to the water masters there that these horses are going to reduce fire damage and build up the soil.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to prevent catastrophic wildfire. Yeah, reduce fire.
Absolutely, and build up the soil and reseed as they go. And, okay, well, thank you so much, Craig.
Yeah, and they benefit many other animals and plants. You know, this is where they evolved.
Yes.
So a lot of these, what they call mutualisms, come back into play when the horses come back in here, because they are ancient presences in here.
Yes, they are. They found their fossils in Carlsbad, dating 7,000 years ago.
Yeah, and even much more recent is my book, The Wild Horse Conspiracy Tales. Oh, by the way, you can get a really good deal on The Wild Horse Conspiracy now on Amazon for those looking.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Craig. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Bye. All right, so I'll keep you updated, folks, on what happens, and we'll see. I know that they're going to try to come up with every excuse imaginable not to bring wild horses back to where they belong. But we have to push forth, and people have to go out there and be a part of witnessing these marvelous animals. And right now, all you see are cattle. You hardly see any wildlife at all. And we need to bring back our wildlife. So thanks for watching. Now, on to our next subject. What is net neutrality? I mean, I don't even really know what that means. It just sounds, ominous that if we don't have it, does that mean there's going to be some kind of takeover? And the FCC chairman just voted against it. It doesn't matter how many millions of people that use the internet encouraged and sent petitions and called to make sure that net neutrality remains neutral. But maybe all is not lost. So let's watch what it is. Thanks.
Does this bother you? What if you had to pay to make it go away? We often assume that all the information on the internet is equally accessible. It's not quite as simple as that, but this ideal is the basis of net neutrality. It's an issue that's been on the agenda in the US for years, but it actually affects people all over the world. Here's the problem. Without net neutrality, your internet service provider, or ISP, such as BT or Comcast, could influence what you see and how quickly you see it. In order for you to watch YouTube, browse Facebook, or read the news, you need an ISP to connect you to that content. Net neutrality demands that ISPs should treat all web traffic the same. Let's think about that in terms of real traffic. The ISPs are like the road between Tech City, where companies like Amazon and Google are based, and Consumerville, where you live. These companies have to send information along the road, which is owned by the ISP. Currently, vehicles from Google and vehicles from a small company travel on the same road at the same speed. The ISP cannot favor one over the other, so the Google van cannot overtake its competitor's little car. But imagine the road is converted into a highway with a fast and slow lane. To access the fast lane, companies have to pay the ISP more money. This favors big companies who can afford to pay. Some companies might even be denied access to the road altogether. It would be the ISP's choice. Without net neutrality, the ISP highway has stopped treating all traffic the same. What does this mean for you? Well, without net neutrality, you might find some services slow down unless your favorite sites pay the ISPs. This has happened before. In 2014, before net neutrality regulations were enshrined in law in the US, Comcast customers noticed Netflix streaming speeds plummeting. It wasn't until Netflix agreed to pay Comcast more money that streaming speeds shot up again. It could also lead to higher prices for you. ISPs could charge premium prices for people who want to watch a video or listen to music at peak times. And if companies are forced to pay for the fast lane, the price increase might be pushed back onto the consumer. That means you could end up paying more to browse your favorite sites. You might even notice a decrease in the quality of content. While larger companies can afford to pay up for better service delivery, smaller companies may not be able to keep up. Less competition means less pressure to improve products and services, and if smaller companies fold, the consumer will have less choice. ISPs could choose to slow down content of any kind. Let's take the business of streaming video. If Netflix makes an arrangement with an ISP, the ISP could block Netflix's competitors from reaching customers. Many ISPs have started their own streaming services. They could favor their own content and block competitors out completely. And it's not just about business. They could also censor content that they disagree with. ISPs argue that if there was less regulation and they were able to charge a premium for faster service, they could reinvest the money in better infrastructure. This could include improved access for people in remote and rural areas. If popular services like YouTube are putting more strain on the ISP's network, it makes sense for them to pay more anyway. Right? But YouTube would say it's not their job to improve the internet, just as it's not BMW's job to build better roads. What's more, many argue that any extra money paid to ISPs would really just go into the pockets of shareholders. One thing's certain, net neutrality creates a level playing field which spurs innovation. Small companies can easily challenge competitors, which motivates them both to improve their products. Small startups have a fighting chance to grow and even surpass their big rivals. That's how Facebook rose from humble origins in Mark Zuckerberg's university dorm room to domination over market leader MySpace. ISPs also argue that any consumers who don't like the way they operate can always choose to switch providers. But it's not that simple. Many people only have access to adequate broadband from one internet provider in their area. Without net neutrality, that one ISP could have a lot of control over what those consumers get to see online. So what do you think? Should net neutrality rules be protected, loosened a little, or even scrapped altogether?
Okay, so now we're going to examine, the FCC chair says we don't get the internet we already have. So let's hear from this lawyer why he's so upset about the FCC's decision to ban neutrality.
Hello everyone, I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and I'm here with just the briefest of updates in the net neutrality situation. You're going to have to step up your game if you want to save the net, because FCC Chairman Pai says that we are just generating fear and hysteria in support of net neutrality and against his attempt to repeal the protections for the internet. He says, another concern I've had is that the plan will harm rural and low-income Americans. Cher, for example, has tweeted that the internet will include less Americans, not more, if his proposal is adopted. But he says the opposite is true. Quote, the digital divide is all too real. Too many rural and low-income Americans are still unable to get high-speed internet access. But heavy-handed Title II regulations just make the problem worse. They reduce investment in broadband networks, especially in rural and low-income areas, by turning back time, so to speak, and returning internet regulation to the pre-2015 era. We will expand broadband networks and bring high-speed internet access to more Americans, not fewer. But I think Chairman Pai might be forgetting that we already paid for fiber optic to every home in the country by paying taxes and such, and promises were made. $4,000 to $7,000 per household was paid, over $500 billion between 1990 and 2016. And this might just be something that an FCC might have the power to implement, to enforce. So if Chairman Pai is so concerned about Americans having internet access, then his agency is the one to make the rules, setting forth how and who and when, and enforcing the money that has already been paid and the contracts that have already been made to bring people their internet access. Now, why am I so upset about this morning? Well, it's because net neutrality is actually losing support according to a recent CNBC poll. Only about 52% of Americans now support net neutrality, and that's pretty much a bipartisan, regardless of politics, number, down from 60% about 2 or 3 years ago. So that's something that's very concerning, and we definitely have to address that. So tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your grandparents, your dog, tell everyone to contact their congressman by going to battleforthenet.com. We have just 3 weeks to save net neutrality. You fill in your name and your email and such, and here's a letter that they've already pre-written to Congress. I urge you to add your own comments explaining why you think that net neutrality is important to you, specifically what you think you're going to to lose in the event that net neutrality is repealed. So thank you for joining me. Once again, I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. I am going to my very last traffic case. Thank you all very much for that, and I will see you in my next video. My sponsors and supporters are in the description below, and I will throw them up on the screen here real quick. Thank you all so much, and I am out. Have a good week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.
Fillies are females less than 4. Stallions are adult males, and mares are adult females. In winter, when Mustangs have thick coats, it's hard to see which horses are mares and which are stallions without looking closely. By spring, the muscular necks and shoulders of stallions are easier to spot. Nevada Mustangs aren't a separate breed because they descend from abandoned and escaped horses of different breeds. They come in many colors: bay, chestnut, palomino, paint, black, and roan, which is brown or black mixed together with white. Adult Mustangs weigh 1,000 pounds and need to eat the equivalent of 10 pounds of hay each day. They have relatively small stomachs and drift across the landscape, eating as they go. Here's a Mustang's skull. These incisors are angled outward to clip plants very close to the ground. There are no teeth in this area. These are the molars. This is the eye socket, and the jaw hinge is behind it. Food is scarce in Nevada, especially in winter. They spend most of their time with lowered heads, seeking green shoots with their strong lips and clipping them with sharp teeth. Mustangs survive on tiny shoots of grass, miniature weeds, and even sagebrush. In contrast, these spring horses are sleek and fat. Adult horses drink 5 to 10 gallons of water a day. They get some water from green grass and snow, but depend on springs and creeks in summer. They usually stay within a 4-mile radius of their water. Mustangs get salt and other minerals from natural deposits in the ground. Horses' eyes are larger than the eyes of any other land mammal, and they see in every direction except directly behind. They're very sensitive to movement, but have binocular vision only to the front. They raise their heads and stare when curious. They see much better at night than humans and can see blue and green colors, but not red. Their hearing and sense of smell are better than ours. These colts are using vision, hearing, and smell to investigate me. They approach closely if I stay perfectly still, but shy away at the slightest movement. After an inspection, they move away and ignore me.